Hi, everyone. Welcome to the podcast today. Joining me today is my good friend, Becky Murray from Lumity HCM. And without a doubt, one of the foremost experts in success factors and someone who's implemented Employee Central. How many times is it now, Becky? I think more than 40.
Yeah, too many to count, I'd say.
Yeah, and then you've also taught the Employee Central Academy. You worked with the SuccessFactors pre-acquisition. So certainly a lot of experience, which I'm looking forward to hearing more about. Recently, Employee Central just crossed 4,000 customers. That's quite amazing.
It's a really big milestone when you think about it. That 4,000 different customers, across the world are utilizing this solution. It's a really great achievement.
Yeah, it blows my mind, right? That many people across the world, that many countries. But, what I want to hear a little bit about it is tell me a little bit about your first experience with EC when it was brand new. You obviously had experience with it well before I did. What was that like?
It was a little bit different. It was, if you can imagine,
Yeah.
quite scaled down. So it's been about almost 10 years, 9.5, 10 years since I started working with SuccessFactors technology, just before SAP acquired SuccessFactors. And I spent about 5 years before that working in the SAP on-premise space. So a nice transition, if you will.
Yep.
But when I started working with Employee Central, it was a period of time when they had just released what we were then calling Employee Central version 2.0. And it's really the basis of Employee Central as we know it today. Most people don't realize that there was, in fact, a 1.0. And a lot of the work that I was doing in the beginning was converting customers from 1.0 to 2.0. It was not at the time, just an automatic update that came out in a quarterly release. It did require a migration exercise just because it was this whole new kind of structure they were putting in place. So that was kind of my first exposure, was moving people from version 1 into version 2. And version 2 at the time was really for those of you who are familiar with kind of the basic profile, just a really glorified version of the basic profile. We didn't have things like position management. There were not NDF objects. It was, probably 4 versions back in terms of user interface. So it's come quite a long way.
Yeah, that's amazing to hear, right? And I didn't know there was a 1.0 till you and I had this conversation previously, and that blows my mind too, right? And so I imagine things were much different. I'm sure it's pretty amazing to look back and see how far the product's come, right? And it wasn't that long ago either, right? In terms of how long it's been. I bet you couldn't have really imagined how a big multinational like a Microsoft or a Pepsi or an EY or one of those companies would be able to use it for over like hundreds of thousands of employees in over 100 countries. Can you tell me a little bit about how that product went from no position management, all that, your perspective on that, and being something that's now capable of handling some of the largest companies in the world?
I think when, SAP acquired SuccessFactors, they took, SuccessFactors' vision of being this complete and encompassing HR solution and really just accelerated that vision, putting in things, like position management. That was one of the first MDF structures that got incorporated. We actually didn't even know the concept MDF or metadata framework at the time. It was just position management that was being incorporated in.
Right.
And they really, SAP's, influence really looked at how can we expand this product to be used by more companies, both geographically, in terms of organizational size and diversity. And so they started taking some of those kind of best practice frameworks from the SAP HCM technology and looking at how they could apply them into Employee Central. And that's not to say that they replicated the SAP functionality into SuccessFactors. That was, I think, never the intention to come up with just a replicated tool. But they looked at what features and functionality have customers been using or asking for, along the way, and how was the process and the business of HR evolving, and what could they take from that and put into Employee Central. So, we got things like position management, we got pay structures and pay scales and
Hmm.
time off functionality. And along the way, we've added, business rules and benefits and various different versions and iterations of user interfaces. So it's evolved quite a ways, and this new functionality that's been introduced is what allows it to accommodate larger organizations, but still remain relevant for smaller organizations as well. So it's in a really nice spot right now.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I can only imagine what you probably saw from implementing it. Maybe your 10th implementation to one of the more recent ones, and how that's kind of evolved over time too, right?
We did, all of our implementations when I first got started were done looking at the data models. I don't know if those of you who have been around for a little while are familiar with them, but at the time we didn't have any business configuration tools.
Right.
Everything was done in the data models, opening up the raw form and making insertions or adjustments right within that code file and uploading it and hoping it was accepted and did what we wanted to do. And hoping that no one else was overwriting your data file as you were making your updates and things like that. So it's evolved quite a ways. Instead of having to go into those old data models, now we have, of course, configuration tools within the administrative areas to help us do that work.
Yeah, I can definitely relate to that. So when I first started working with Employee Central, and when I first started teaching the Employee Central Academy, I remember that, having to put those files into provisioning, and what that was like. Like you said, hoping that there's not an error, and then hoping that you're not stepping on someone else, controlling the access to it, and then really going from that to now being an admin center and being able to do that, right? So yeah, I thought that was phenomenal. And even the MDF objects, right? To be able to create a custom object so quickly. I know from my on-prem experience, right, having to create a custom info type or something like that, I had to get a developer involved. But now
Yep.
with Employee Central, like, I can go do that. And not only that, I can do it very quickly. And then even put it on standard objects. I can use the standard role-based authorizations, right? That's probably a topic in and of itself of how authorizations has kind of evolved over time to what it is now, I'm sure. But
Yep.
I'll switch gears a little bit. You've taught the Employee Central Academy, which is something we have in common. You probably had students that have gone on to do a lot of great things, and I'm sure it's a great feeling to share your knowledge. And I'm sure you also get a sense of pride when you see people that you've enabled as they complete projects and have success. Do you still stay in touch with people or get random messages from people that you've taught and or things like that?
I do. I do still keep in touch with folks. Some I've kept in touch with just along the way.
Hmm.
Others I'll run into at conferences or at different events. We may find each other via LinkedIn, or just be engaged on different projects or on different initiatives together and recognize each other's names and that type of thing. And it's always interesting to see where people are now and what types of things they're doing. For those of you who don't know, the SAP Academy was where all consultants had to take their training back in the day. Is it silly to say that, back in the day?
No,
But we
no.
all used to take live instructor-led trainings for a couple weeks at a time. So Imran and I both taught courses in the academy to different consultants and SAP employees, and it gave folks the opportunity to have a lot of hands-on learning. Of course, there were fewer folks back in at that time, so it was manageable. Now that we've got so many different people working in the success factor space, that's not always scalable. So there are
Right.
different modes and means for training now, but everyone used to do instructor-led kind of live web-based training back in the day.
Yeah, I remember. And actually, even before that, I taught some on-prem courses, right? And those were like in person, and those were even different. So going from that to the SuccessFactors Academy and kind of seeing the evolution has been pretty interesting.
it's nice to think that, we can reach a lot more people with training now by having those different mediums in place. And instead of lugging our binders, to a conference room and trying to get everyone connected to a system there. So,
Yep. So, like when I look at the training and how it's evolved, and now that people can go and kind of do some of that self-paced learning and things like that, it's pretty cool to see. And even but I at times do miss the in-person interactions, as we all do in 2021, right? So one of the programs that I was involved in, which I think was one of the coolest things I've been involved in from my time at SAP, is I got to teach the NS2 Academy. And so that's a program, it's NS2 serves as the program, and that's where SAP trains veterans, and you teach them different software. And so we taught people, this was a few years ago now, I think it was 3 years almost, we taught them SuccessFactors Core, then we taught them EC and recruiting, and it was such a great experience to spend time with that group. And it was also tremendous to see how they grew right from the beginning, and that was in person. I still remember I went to Virginia, and I taught these people in person, and kind of saw them evolve over the course of weeks. And I've even stayed in touch with a few of them. I actually saw a picture from one of them recently where they're building a house now, right? And so these people's lives have been changed, and now they're very involved in the ecosystem, and they're going on and doing great things. So it's been really cool to see that. So mhm.
what's kind of the philosophy around that project? Is it, for veterans who are looking for their next career? It's training, but it's also a little bit more, right? Isn't it
Yeah,
some?
it's a transition. It's
Yeah.
transitioning from that life. And when I look at it, the people that I had in my class, there was about 20 of them. They had no background on IT in some cases, right? And so it's about getting them from what they're used to, which is much different, right? Than for some of them, they weren't on computers, but did the effort they put in was just amazing. They were all day, all night, and even afterwards, right? They were constantly studying. I still get random messages from people. They're continuing to improve yourself. So the work ethic was just incredible, as it has been, and now being a few years later to kind of see them grow and prosper, it's been great. And I still keep in touch with a handful of them, or I'll get random LinkedIn messages or things like that. So it's certainly cool to see.
That's awesome. I
Yeah.
come from a big military family, actually. So I always love, programs that highlight those who have served and, opportunities for them to move into their second career. So very cool of you to have done that.
Yeah, and it was just great to see, right? Like uh, see different people that come from different parts of life, and also to really change these people's lives too. So it was cool. It was cool. All right. So I'll switch gears a little bit. Given what you know about some of the product direction and the vision of SuccessFactors with HXM, which was announced, Success Connect 2 years ago, including things like the new homepage user experience, along with the additional investment focused on core HR, time, payroll, right? We have a new time tracking SKU. What's your perspective on the overall direction of the product? Are you happy with what you're seeing?
Well, that's a loaded question, my friend.
Well, you can
I'm
give me the
very,
truth.
I'm very happy with what I'm seeing. I, having been in this space for so long, can appreciate, the progression of this tool set, and, seeing SAP's focus really on employee engagement and tools to kind of assist the employee or to assist HR as they assist employees, I think is a really nice focus. Back when HR technology was initially being developed, it was more transactional. How can we get the data in and then get the data out and get people paid? And
Mhm.
the evolution over the past, I don't know, 8 years or so has really been, how can we help our customers do more for their employee base, and how can we enable employees to do more for themselves? And so building up solution sets to kind of support those initiatives and creating experiences within the solution that employees can start to engage with. It's been a really neat thing to watch that evolution. And in terms of where things are going in kind of the future forward mode, I think the new time tracking functionality is just amazing. I'm so happy
Hmm.
that has been introduced. I know you are as well.
I
Um,
am, yeah.
it fills a lot of gaps for a lot of organizations, especially as we see more rules and regulations in terms of employment compliance in different locations for tracking vacation or paying out time off, things like that. And even for organizations that don't need to track that for compliance, just tracking that for employee satisfaction, knowing who's taking time off and when, or who's not taking time off and maybe could be. I think those are nice tools to have within your solution set. I'm a big fan of the expansion into benefits, and particularly US benefits. We've seen a lot of advancements in that space. There's still a little bit of work to be done, but
Sure.
the
Yep.
solution as it stands now can support a lot of mid-market organizations for their benefit needs. Particularly organizations that do their benefits still on paper. The
Right.
idea that you
Right.
could have an electronic version of your process and have people do open enrollment and renewals through Employee Central is just, a great step in the right direction. And then I know we talked about this earlier, but one of the things I'm most excited about is Work Zone for HR.
Hmm.
This layer of user experience, both a user interface and guided process that kind of sits on top of SuccessFactors, but predominantly Employee Central, and helps walk employees through different experiences that they may want to have or are planning to have or currently going through, whether that's a work-life type change or they're looking to do some type of career planning, or they're wanting to have a consolidated view of data from multiple different sources kind of in one place so that we don't have to keep logging into different sites for different things. Kind of pulling that together into one cohesive view and experience, I think is pretty exciting. So
Yeah, yeah, me too. And like, I'll be honest with you, when we first announced like HXM, people would almost like roll their eyes at me a little bit, like, well, the product's exactly the same as it was yesterday. What do you mean, right? Like, it's the same. But I think when you look at that, I think WorkZone kind of ties that together. And what you have to realize about the HXM is it's not about the product; it's also about the vision, right? It's about
yeah.
when we are developing the product, look at it from an experience standpoint. So, when you talk about the roadmaps and the things that we're focusing on, such as like Work Zone, it's about tying those together and putting those experiences together. So you're right, when we first launched it, the product was exactly what it was the day before, right? There was no drastic change, but it's been part of a culture change too, right? And I can kind of see that from an SAP standpoint on how we go about prioritizing things. And even now, like, I can see a big focus point for 2021 and in the future is to continue to build out the product with that angle in mind, right? And one thing I'm very excited about is we have a new, from the board, from the SAP board, so not even SuccessFactors leadership, but the SAP leadership, we have an investment on top of current development with the goal of expanded use case and a focus in core HR, also to include cloud to on-prem integration, right, to make that more
Yes.
seamless and better experience for people that might have their core and Employee Central and then on-prem time or payroll, and then also the time tracking SKU and payroll as well. So we really think that this will make it easier for on-prem customers to move to the cloud, as well as just cover more of those use cases. And so from my standpoint, I'm more optimistic about the future than I've ever been before. So
Well, I
that's
think one of the things, this past year with the pandemic has really demonstrated to organizations is whether or not the level of engagement they thought they had with employees actually existed. As people either worked to move to work from home or implemented, maybe atypical work schedules or work patterns or work habits. We were forced to turn to the tools that we had in place to
right.
continue with engagement in some, non-traditional manners in some cases. And so organizations really got to test out their levels of employee engagement and whether the
Mm-hmm.
tools that they had in place or the processes that they had in place actually led to engagement or not. Especially if you're having people work remotely, how do you keep them connected to the organization when we're not, all sitting together or talking by the water cooler or going to lunch once a week, those types of things. And so I
Mm-hmm.
think a lot of organizations realized, okay, yes, we do have engagement processes in place. I know where all of my employees are and I know how they're doing in terms of work, but then also in terms of their personal lives, that everyone's in a good space. Or maybe I don't have as much awareness into these different areas as I thought I did. And is there a way that I can either utilize technology that I already have to foster more engagement, or perhaps to look for some additional technology to kind of help foster that engagement? So this past year, I think, opened up a lot of folks' eyes to that concept of, engagement is not just a buzzword that we threw out there. It was a means for, aligning our solution really to assist organizations with relating to their employees and vice versa, across all spectrums of human resources. So it's been
Yeah,
a nice
yeah.
journey.
Absolutely. And then, that's almost a topic in and of itself, right? And from my standpoint, like the world's not going back to how it was, right? With the remote workforce and things like that, it's going to be different going forward, right? We saw that all throughout 2020, and we could probably talk about that for another 20 minutes, but I'll, I won't take any more of your time. Thanks a lot for joining me. I really appreciate all of your insight. It was so great to hear about, the history, the growth, and I think a lot of people will find it very useful. So thank you very much.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.